So we want to call it content and podcasting secrets?
I feel like the first word matters.
Secret podcasts.
Our name should also portray the expertise. The shit behind this
Right.
is the real thing. Like,
Right.
And I don't want us to get dismissed, and I don't want us to dismiss ourselves, and I want us to stand in the expertise, but then it can be as funny as hell.
What are some words that would portray that? I don't have my glasses. Hold on.
That's okay. I can read them. Advisory board, authorities, cabinet,
Authority
council,
might be interesting.
an inner circle.
Inside authority?
I
Authority.
like authority because
Yeah.
it leans a little more male.
Force. Jurisdiction. Dominion. Might. Beef? What the hell is
that
pizzazz?
sounds-
How is, by any stretch of the imagination, is pizzazz a synonym for authority? That's not correct. Tipster. Budinsky.
Budinsky. Maybe that's just the name of the show, Budinsky. What about insider discussions?
We don't want discussions. We want answers. Guru. Phenomenon. Hotshot.
It is an insider look at how professionals are approaching not just podcasting, but content as well, because it does tie in. And I think to be at the top of your game, you do have to have an integrated strategy.
There are 10,000 services to help you launch your podcast.
Yes.
Then they take your money and then they launch and then they leave and then you're stuck there and you still have all this work to do and you get absolutely nothing in return.
Because it's a long game, there's nothing easy about being a week over week consistently creative person that's also putting out something that's in production, because there's creativity and production, and those are both hard. I also am really excited to kind of layer in some of the questions that you and I see in some of the larger Facebook groups.
How do you choose a guest? How do you handle difficult guests? How do you get your show promoted? How do you grow your show?
There's a lot of assumptions. I mean, how do you monetize? How do you get a sponsor? And I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about that's behind the scenes that you can't really get into when you're doing a simple answer on a Facebook group. We're going to dive into some news, because there's a lot of stuff going on in this industry. It's happening quickly. I would love a place to respond to some of it. I think some of the myths that we hear, because there's a lot going on behind the scenes that may not be true. Some of the best practices. I know that sounds boring, but what makes a good show? How can you replicate some of that? How could you iterate on some other kind of best practices to make them your own? I think getting into social media at some point is interesting. What's effective, what's not? Are audiograms actually helpful? Do you need a newsletter? Do you need a website? If you're a brand and you're trying to figure out how to reach people, how do you do that authentically?
How do you really look at data? How do you really keep people engaged? What kind of titles work? What kind of topics work? Like, how do you do a great interview? How do you control the conversation in like a positive way, not like a manipulative, but it is kind of manipulative. I mean, it's your freaking show. How do you control the conversation? How do you pitch guests? How do you choose guests? How do you pitch shows? What really works? Like all that too.
And I think also managing the other side of it, which is saying no.
We both have techniques and tools for checking people out, how you figure out if they'll be good. How do you prep people, yourself and the guests, for a great interview? How do you do a solo? Like, what are all the different styles that you could do? What are the results you could get? Like you brought that up, purpose. What's the purpose? But what are the real results that your content can do comparing the different platforms?
And growing. I think growing is another big question.
Huge.
And is growth really the important thing?
Right.
I actually don't know that the big show, or I'm using this, but the big show is the thing that you're after, because I know that a niche, small, audience can also be the thing that powers an entire business. So I think maybe breaking that down a little bit to really question, we get a lot from bro marketers saying that growth is the thing, but maybe you're not the top of the charts, but you could still very easily power a very powerful business with a small and, really engaged audience.
Well, all the assumptions too. It makes me crazy when I see someone say, like, many people start a podcast and then come to realize that interviewing is the hardest part. And it's like, interviewing is the whole part if it's an interview show. Like, what? It's like many people start to write a book and then realize writing a book is the hardest part. Like, it wasn't buying a pen.
I think we should also talk about how you name a show because
We just did.
I mean, well, yes.
Adequate podcasting and content. I kind of like adequate.
Adequate.
Is that bad?
Or passable.